This is super cool though. StreamYard.
Gotta love it.
No, I might be using it in my actual job now, like my day job.
A
I was
quick
like,
little StreamYard plug.
well, my boss has been wanting like a system. He's not very good at this stuff. Oh, here we are.
All right. Hey, hey, hey. What's up, everybody?
What's
It's
good?
Alex here with Madison and Pierre Amour. How's everybody doing?
Lovely.
Doing good, doing great, doing fine.
So everybody that knows me, everybody that knows in aeronautics knows that I love talking to down to earth people. And Maddie knows that. That's why she hangs out with me. We've had
Very
many
true.
great conversations. And that is also why we decided to have Pierre Amour come chat with us and just kind of give us a little bit of a laydown about some things he's been working on. And yeah, just kind of chat about life. Everybody's living one, so it's pretty fun to kind of just chat around with different people and see what different people are up to and their experiences, their dreams, their challenges. We're real people having real conversations.
Plug
um,
it.
so, yeah, that being said, why don't you introduce yourself? Kind of tell the people.
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me on here. I'm very appreciative of the platform to kind of talk and share the experiences that I've had over the last few years. I go by the name of Pierre Amour. I'm a songwriter, recording artist, and overall just visionary. Um, in the last few years, I've spent on somewhat of an odyssey, just wandering the earth and meeting new people and creating art based off those experiences and the people that I've met. So I'm really looking forward to kind of just having a conversation with you guys about that and getting your experiences. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of overlap and
Yeah,
shared
There
philosophies.
always is somehow.
yeah, I know from some personal conversations that we've had that we definitely have a lot of similarities in some of the things that we've kind of worked through. That's why I think having this platform to talk with artists is so great, right? Because anybody that's out there that says that creativity is like easy doesn't know about creativity. At least not the way I know about it. Um, there's so much that goes into it that I don't think gets talked about. Because it really is like an expression of self in you know so many different formats. Like I got my painting here, I got my music over there. Um, you know, I love dancing, love body work and stretching and expressing myself that way. There's so many different ways you can express yourself. And so, yeah, I know just from the chats I've had with people, there's so many different things that go into it and different outlets that it happens through, but everybody kind of generally goes through the same thing. Um, you know, so I know for myself, I can get into these places where I feel like I have so many things going on in my head. I don't know how to just like sit down and focus on something. Um, and I know when I'm in those places, it's hard for me to feel like I can really get creativity flowing and how I'm maybe used to just pumping it out when everything's all good and dandy. Um, yeah, I guess I already just kind of started getting deep with it.
That's what we
But
like.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why these like conversations are necessary. Is I think we often need a reminder that it's not always a smooth process. It's not always just, you know, flowing out easily. There comes the work and the process that leads up to that moment of expression and then also the aftermath of that moment of expression. And it can get pretty complex and pretty hectic in the best of ways though, really, because art is, at least in my experience, the quickest, not even the quickest way, but the most in-depth way of self unraveling
Mm-hmm.
and kind of bringing to light and bringing to the forefront the things that we think about or deal with on this journey.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's absolutely such. I mean, I think you both have put it so well, but um, just to build off of that, it's as creativity is something that I think is such a good self exploration tool, right? But at least for me, like I grew up feeling very much so that at least like in our society with the technological age, all that stuff, everything was about efficiency to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everything had to be quick, it had to be good, it had to be whatever it was. And so for me, that didn't really leave much room for creativity. And I feel like I did create a persona very much based around the traits that I thought were beneficial based off of what was around, what I thought, which were things like efficiency, which were hard work. Um, and
Yep.
I got to my 20s and I realized like I really didn't know what creativity was. And I think you guys both just alluded to it there, right? Like there are the points where you don't feel anything and you don't feel like you're creative and you have so much going on in your mind. And for me, it was, I was valuing all these things that didn't even give me a space to have like creative thought and flow. And it was
Yep.
really having to break through those and discover the ways that I was actually doing something for me, um, in order to kind of like get to even think about what creativity is. So yeah, forever I said, artists, creatives, they've got it easy. And then I like it's been like the most difficult journey of my life is really figuring out me, which I think is through creativity.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely a general assumption that a lot of people make. They're kind of like, oh, they hear of all the artists where it's like, oh, this 16-year-old kid decided to become a rapper and he made millions of dollars, right? Or this artist just sold this one painting, um, for 15 million or whatever, right? I think so many people just see that end point of, oh wow, here's all this success for something that maybe took like a week to create, um, but they're not seeing everything else that went into just creating them, right? Because at the end of the day,
Mhm.
as an artist, you have to know how to market yourself. You are your brand. um, so there's so much work that goes into that, in itself, that I don't think really generally gets recognized. People always kind of want that efficiency, cookie cutter, cut corners. Let me just, try and make as big a splash as quick as I can. But, I don't think that's where the quality is. I think everybody knows,
Nah,
right? Quality over quantity. But then it's like, how do you create a sustainable model for yourself as an artist where you make sure that you're creating like the quality to put out there, right? Because you have to do your own quality control, all that stuff. And there's the pressure of, providing for yourself and making sure that, you can pay your bills and all this stuff. It's hard to kind of break that initial threshold sometimes, um, to really make it so that you feel like you can take a week off and just go into creative dungeon and lock the doors and see what you come up with. Um, yeah.
Creative dungeon.
yeah, and like you mentioned, all that quality control and self marketing and branding can sometimes be the biggest inhibitor of getting into the flow because you start to overthink everything as something that you have to make presentable. When in reality, the thing that unlocks the flow is just falling into that art of being, of just without any inhibitions, without any what others think, but rather just a complete absorption in expressing what's been experienced within that moment. And a lot
Yeah.
of times with the amount of visibility, like Madison mentioned with the technologies, you get to see everybody's endpoint. You don't see the process. That can kind of distract from your own process because you're like, well, this is the end. This is where I need to be. I'm not there yet. How do I get there? I have to stay productive. I have to work harder.
Yep.
When in reality, you just have to be,
Yep.
and accept.
Yeah. But that's exactly, I think you both were saying very similar things there, but just being, right? Like just being who you are, is really what unlocks, that creative process. I'm not thinking about what someone else says. I'm not thinking about, is this marketable, right? It's like being marketable by just being you. And that's like the craziest part of being an artist. And people will say people got lucky, right? And people do. But at the same time, I think a lot of people do reach and gravitate towards people who are just being them, whether it's shadow or light, unhealed, healed. It's them. It's an authentic expression. And
Yep.
when you are creating something and you're creating it as an artist to share with others, that fear of getting over having to share something that people might not like, that is you, totally you, getting over that hump, I think, is one of the bravest things people can do.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And that's
Embracing
why
the chaos. That's what I like to call it. You have to embrace.
I'm the chaos queen, like self-proclaimed. I thrive.
I know I said this last time we chatted with Tegan, but one of the things that I love about music festivals is just the absolute freedom of expression. Like people just being whoever they are, they're having a good time. They don't care what other people are doing. They're there to like listen to music and dance around and be themselves and feel themselves. And, um, yeah, I mean, it's cool because I saw an Instagram post actually today that was talking about this, but
On my story, because I
yeah,
definitely have one. Yeah.
yep,
I
that's
was
where
so
it was.
stoked you were talking about
I
this. I'm
saw
like,
that.
yes, there we go.
Yeah, you want to explain it then?
I mean, in general, we were just talking about it, but he basically says, like one of the most detrimental things to humans now is that we think that technological connection is a good enough substitute for real connection. So even things such as virtual music festivals, right? And that's he's basically saying that's not the point. If you look at all of history, all cultures, societies, they have had festivals where the normal societal rules go out the window. You're not in a basic way, you're not in suit and tie, you're not saying you're not minding your P's and Q's, you are just being. In any culture, any place. And I'm sorry, guys, my dog is crying.
It's okay, Lee.
Again,
It's gonna be okay.
adding.
He's saying he's given his what's the word? He agrees with
He
you.
agrees. Yes.
Yeah. He's like,
He's doing his finger snaps. Yeah. But basically, he says, we've seen this because we need that as humans. And we need that human connection, and we need that space to be open and free and away from all of these rules, because we are not built. We are built as individuals. All the rules around us can be beneficial, and they help society run smoothly, but we need to be, as human beings, expressive creatures. And so why music festivals are so important or so helpful to people is it creates that space for that. We don't have as much of it, and I'd say in American culture, right? You don't have an American, we have 4th of July and that type of stuff. We have holidays, but having a festival where you're dancing and going crazy and like that's normal is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it kind of brings a certain level of community. And like you said, I think especially in the States, that's kind of lacking. Like we all build up these experiences and this weight, but there's not really that space to just let it go and express. because of that constant, pressure to just stay productive, there's not really those spaces unless you're seeking them out. Like personally, I've never been to a music festival, which is, as a musician, you're like, what? I've been on plenty of stages, but the other experience, like days and days of what I'm fan of, just being out there, that's something I'd still like to experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, we'll go sometime. We'll find one. We'll pick one, and I think we said this last week or not last week, but last talk with Tegan too. We'll
We're just gonna have a big group festival like
exactly.
party.
We're just gonna pick a festival, and everybody from an aeronautics is gonna show up. We'll have our own campground, and we'll just have a great time.
It'll be a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
We'll have good snacks. We always do.
we always have the best snacks.
Yes.
So I got a question for you then. So, we've been kind of talking about how it's almost like there's a time when, you kind of hit your flow and you're able to be creative. And then there are the times where, it kind of seems like everything's getting in your way. So for you as an artist, how do you find yourself are you able to like pinpoint when you're in those ruts? And like, if you do, what helps you kind of move out of that so that you can start moving back into the creative space?
So in the past, I was able to pinpoint them because there'd be an obvious block, like a writer's block, or just, not being able to get up and do something, express something. But now I just kind of try to, rather than change the situation or change the environment, just change my opinion of the environment. So I view everything as part of the creative process. Like right now, I'm in as what I would usually describe as a mundane portion of the process. It's just very much like I wake up, I go for a walk, eat some seeds, eat some, greens and stuff like very just minimal stuff. And sometimes I'll get the thought of like, oh, I need to get out there. I need to go do a show. I need to travel. I need to, do something. But rather than seeing this as a rut, I see it as part of the process. This is the regenerative process. This is like where all the ideas are kind of welling up. And then that moment will arrive where I have the space to express, the things that I've been thinking about during this moment of like quietude. And that's helped a lot because it kind of keeps it more consistent, rather than having that guilt and that fear of like, oh, I'm not doing enough. It's like, no, this is equally as important as that moment of expression is understanding the tides of how, there's the ups and the downs, but it's more like a wave. The more that it goes down, then the higher it's going to go up, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And just experiencing that and learning, because, for example, my last trip last summer when I was gone for a few months, I feel like I reached, this moment of like, oh, every day doing something like studio session and then go perform and then, just constantly. But eventually you crash and you start to miss the mundaneness that you were trying to escape before. Like, oh, I want to have a constant sleep schedule. I want to know where I'm going to, lay my head at the end of the day. Like these things that you kind of take for granted and just intertwining it. So the whole thing is just being and being present and whatever the moment is. And it's something that I'm still practicing. Like I'm not an ultimate, expression mode where I can but practicing and making the intent, I think is helping a lot so that when I do get the opportunity to express, is going to be that much more fluid because it won't feel like something that I have to quote unquote make the most of, like a fleeting moment rather than this is just part of the rhythm.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's like it's when you were talking about you know, like kind of going through, you know, like the mundane things to kind of like build up almost like your reserve, and then you go and you have this reserve and you're like, okay, like how long can I last on this reserve? Um, you know, I really connected with that because that's exactly what I do. Um, my girlfriend Julacey, she'll tell you like I'll when I'm home, like sure I'll still work on some stuff, but for the most part, it's like my recharge time. It's my meditation. Like I'll just like not leave the house and just totally like take care of me and do me and you know just kind of take that time for myself. And then when I go out and I do work and I like find myself in these flows and you know I'm maybe taking like an extra opportunity that presented itself to kind of like go out of my way and do a little bit of work. You know, I find that I can actually show up more as myself because I'm not drained. um, you know, because we very much do live in a society and time where everything is so results driven. It's how much can you produce and how much can you get for how much you're doing. Um, you know, but they're not talking about how you're doing it or how they're not talking about you at the end of the day. Like fuck every the other part of it. They're just not talking about you. Um, and you know, so finding that time where you can really sit down and take care of yourself, you know, that's that's always like a meditation for me. That just it just sets me up to just hit the ground running. Like it'll just click for me some days. Like I'll just wake up and like kind of start my mundane routine, and then I'll have a thought, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go sit down and like do this real quick. Maybe I'll just like sit at my drum set, and then I'll sit down and have like the best like 2 hour session. Just like everything feels like so like smooth. But if I sit down and think like, oh, like I have to do this, I have to practice. You know, you've got time. You know, you're home. Take advantage of this. And I'm like making myself do it. Then you know that's where the quality starts to drop because it's almost like I'm putting myself in a box, right? I'm expecting something of myself when in reality, like maybe I just need to go lay on the couch for a while, you know, and not do anything, not think about anything, and just see what comes out of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think everything you both have been describing, right, is it's figuring out how to enjoy the downtime, right? Because at least, and for me as well, I feel like I operate in the same way, but I struggle with the same anxieties or the stress of like, I should be more productive, I should be doing stuff. And for me, it was like really learning to break down, okay, like, why do I think I should do this? And it came down to, I thought it made me more valuable if I was able to constantly work because that's what we've been taught. And so a lot of, and this is something I still very, very heavily struggle with, and I'm still breaking through is, you know, when you're in the moments of the downtime, or when you aren't as, you know, you're not as busy, being able to sit there and say, if I am feeling that I just need to lay on the couch right now, I am still valuable. And that is a valid thing to want. And when we're able to get into that flow, that's where I find I get the most rejuvenation. And then that's when I can get my stuff done more. Because I do think the ups and downs are 100% of anyone's process. I think I think creativity, its expression is also a healing expression, right? Like the ups and downs are part of healing. I think creativity is a great way to heal because it allows you to see you in your raw form.
Yeah.
So learning how to go with those ebbs and flows and realize, okay, wait, this isn't me not being busy. This is me getting the chance to rest, to check in with me, so that as I continue through this up and down in this process, like you said, the downs might go down really down, but then they go up way higher.
Yep.
Yeah, and to think like, you know, why do we create, or what's the point of it all, you know? And sometimes, like you said, it could be lost in the sense of trying to feel more valuable. But why do we want to feel more valuable? It's so that we have I guess, more of a freedom or that sense of freedom to do the things that we want to do. But it's like, why not do those things now? Like,
Yep.
if things were to change, if I could trade everything for millions of dollars, I wouldn't, because I would want to do the same thing. I want to wake up, go for a walk, sit in the sun, sit in the woods, eat some seeds,
Yeah.
see my friends. I wish that I could do that at a grander scale, but learning to accept those parts of it, it helps in the long run, because even when you get to a certain point that you've been, working towards getting to, then there's another one. And then, so you got to kind of accept what's right there and be present there. And then the whole journey becomes the end goal, in a sense. The process becomes the profit.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's staying present, right? Like learning to enjoy the present moment and not worrying about, they say, depression is when you're stuck in the past, anxiety is when you're stuck in the future. So why not try to like live in the now? And that's kind of what it all alludes to. Easier said than done.
Yes, definitely.
Always
Because
easier.
I always, when we talk about this stuff, I feel like it sounds so simple and so like I would hate, like me 2 years ago before I started my entire like journey would look at me and be like, can you shut up? Like you are making this sound like I just need to wake up and go pick some flowers and my life will be perfect. Like there is so much that goes into this.
Yeah, and then as you're picking the flowers, you're thinking like, oh, like I need to be doing this, or I should go here. Like I wish I could be there. But I think in trying to get there and making that intention, even if you don't get there 100%, it's still better than 0%.
Yeah.
I rather, it's that thing where I never understood when people would say like, I would rather die trying. But then I realized I had never found what I actually cared about and loved. And when I started to do that, I finally started understanding like I would 1,000,000% rather die trying this thing that I love and I enjoy and that makes me feel good than have $1 billion and be at a job that is slowly stealing my soul. And I get that everyone's journey is different, but when you get that point of like, oh my God, I really just, why wouldn't I rather do this?
Yeah. I feel like a problem that I see so many people have, artists and outside of, artistry, is people kind of attach themselves and their identity to what they produce or what they're doing. People are like, oh, I'm, I'll just use this as an example because you're in front of me and we're talking, like I am a musician, right? So then they start identifying everything that they are and do around that idea of being a musician. And so if they're not successful in being a musician, then who are they, right?
Yeah, you
what
literally
value do they
can.
give to the world because what they're trying to portray themselves as is, something that's potentially not there yet, on the grander scale. So, I see so many people just beat themselves up and like completely just drop out of whatever their dreams and aspirations are because they attach too much of their identity to what they're doing and not them being them, just doing whatever they want to be doing, which happens to be maybe music, right? Um, I definitely had that with the body work that I did. I hit the ground running with that work, and I built up a clientele base pretty quickly, and I got a lot of very great positive feedback. And I just, I hit this rut for like probably like 2.5, 3 years where I worked myself to the ground because I was like, oh, here's something that I'm really good at, and people love when I do it. So that means I should probably just do it as much as I can, and it was a job. So I got paid well. So I was like, all right, this is it. This is who I am. I'm just going to be, this body
Alex, the
worker
body work guy.
for the rest of my life. I'm successful at this. Like, I'm good to go. I like it. And, this is me now. And it was a huge paradigm shift. I noticed both for myself and the people around me that actually truly loved me and like cared about me. When I started to make that distinction and separation from, okay, I am Alex who does body work versus I am Alex the body worker. Um, because then I started to give myself more laxity around not doing that. I actually got back into painting again. I started getting into music again, all that kind of stuff, because I wasn't so fixated on making sure that I was staying successful in this part of myself that I, attached as my identity. Um,
It's everything you're talking about, like with the body work. I get too. Like for me, it was Maddie the runner, right? Like I ran my whole life. I was good at it. I always said I hated it, but I went to college on a scholarship. I did all that stuff, and then my body started to break down on me as about like my second year of college,
you're
and
upsetting Link.
I know I need to let him out. I'm sorry, guys. My brother came home.
And I think he's agreeing still. He's just like, yeah, yeah.
He's my emotional support animal. He had to deal with a lot of the see, he knows. But when that started to happen and I started to lose that part of me, it had always been who I was. I was an athlete. I was strong. My body was strong. Maddie's strong. And then I started getting injured and I couldn't perform. And I spiraled and I didn't even realize I was spiraling because I was in such denial about it. And I don't think I got out of that until probably the last like year or so. And like Alex, you were saying, you start to see a shift with like the people who really love and care about you and want you to truly just be happy. And
Yep.
then the people you've surrounded yourself with now who are not, I'm not saying anyone's a bad person. I'm not saying like, we all have our actions and our choices and whatever, but you see this, I started to see the shift and that scared me. Also seeing people fall away from me, right? Wow, you really did just care for me and for XYZ reason. But it's not a bad thing. That's like actually exactly what you want, but it's so scary because it's like, why would I want someone near me who doesn't like who I am at my fullest expression? Like, their opinion is valid and I respect it, but that's not going to make me feel good. It's not going to make them feel good. But it's a scary thing because I think as you start to do that, like you said, you start to take yourself away from what makes you successful, you start to lose people as well.
Yeah, and I think, it kind of opens up another door where for me, like I've started to realize that I have different friends for different things. Like I don't have one group of friends that I do everything with. I have some friends that I really like, we'll go to like Restore and we'll just sit there and we'll do cryotherapy, we'll do compression, we'll do like IV drips together. Stuff like that. And then I have other friends where like we just play video games together. And sure, maybe those two groups might intermingle, but like everybody doesn't have to like every part about me and like all the things that I do. I found that the more I just keep doing me and the things that I enjoy doing, I actually just keep attracting more and more people that are doing the same thing. And then, you just find yourself hanging out with people that enjoy you and the things that you're doing because they're doing the same. You're not forcing yourself to stick to some mold.
Yeah. Or having like a monoculture of being.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even just like monochromatic, right? it's a good look for certain situations, but you got to spice life up. You got to kind of
You got to build a mosaic of
change.
interests and expressions because you can't just put everything into one. Because like you guys were describing with running and with body work, I had similar experiences with music where you attach your whole identity to that one thing that a majority of people know you for doing. And then when there starts to be those little faults or those cracks, then everything shatters. You start to question everything. And like you said, Maddie, you kind of spiral. But sometimes that spiral is what's necessary so you can realize, like, oh, I also do this. I also love doing this. And I have people that I connected through these aspects. But it can be very scary. Like my situation on my last voyage was extremely scary because I had spent the whole year building up to that trip, working like, okay, this is, I'm putting in all these hours, it's going to pay off because then I'm going to be able to express fully into this, bottleneck of being of music. But eventually, you burn out if you don't take care of yourself. And I just kind of kept fighting it. Like, no, I have to do more. I have to stay the artist. That's my value as a being. And I literally reached a moment where I felt like I was a hologram of myself because I wasn't, performing and I wasn't recording. I wasn't doing anything. And I was like, who am I if I'm not making art?
You're like the Tupac hologram.
Yeah.
Pierre Amour.
Exactly.
Still out there performing, but it's just not you.
And it's just like the same way as a hologram. It's just like a portion. And I realized, well, no, I'm coming back into fullness by realizing that that piece of reflection of me isn't all of me. And if that falls, I can still fall back onto the other things that I enjoy or the other things that we find joy in.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's also measuring like what success is too, right? I mean, you expressing yourself at the end of the day is what I would say is still successful artistic expression. But and that
you're cutting in and out, Maddie.
Yeah.
About Alex, like the success.
It's that desert Wi-Fi.
Yeah, for real. All right. Well, I think we lost Maddie.
No.
I'm sure she'll be back.
It was frozen for me, guys.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
You're back.
Hi. Sorry. See, chaos
You're speaking
all the time.
too much truth. Yeah, you got
my FBI agent shut me down. But I would love to hear more about your trip itself last year, what you were working on, kind of, I mean, anything you'd like to tell us.
So leading up to that trip, I had been, working with a lot of my friends and collaborators kind of remotely. And just being in the flow of building and creating on a consistent basis. And it was fun in the process because it was just like a syncopation of working, but then also working creatively and finding that balance. And being able to get out there with a budget, from putting in the hours and raising up the money for myself. It felt good. But again, attaching too much to the outcome kind of led to that situation that I described. But in hindsight, I wouldn't change a thing because I could only describe it as a painting. Sometimes you're doing the strokes and you have an intent of what you're trying to paint, but sometimes you can get lost. But in that moment of being lost, you realize the true bigger picture of what you're putting together. So the main goal was to perform. So prior to everything shutting down, I was out there and we had gotten asked to perform at this 1-day festival. But everything got closed, postponed, and shut down. And once things started opening up a few years later, they invited me back over there. And we were like, let's take this as, let's take advantage of this as much as we can. Let's make the most of it. Let's finish the projects we started. Let's elaborate. And we were able to do that. But then I kind of just burnt out, I didn't, when you do things firsthand, that's when you kind of learn the lessons that you weren't even thinking of. You can strategize, you can plan, but there's always going to be variables that come into play that you weren't thinking of, and you're not going to know that they come into play without experiencing them fully. So we were able to put together a really solid project. It's actually called Marmalade, and the meaning of it was
Orange
coming.
marmalade?
Yeah, it was coming into fruition within itself. Like, what is marmalade? Marmalade is taking the rind and taking like bitter oranges that you wouldn't normally be able to eat on their own, and kind of breaking them down, adding some sugar. But even after you do that, you can't just eat the marmalade. It's not just ready. You gotta let it sit. You have to have the patience to let it sit and know that the longer you let it sit, the sweeter it's gonna be, the more robust the flavors are gonna be. So it's like right now, everything that we did, everything that we broke down, that we put together, it's just in that jar. And it's just like we're allowing the flavors to reach,
It's fermenting.
Exactly. It's all coming together. The rind is breaking down and mending with the sugar. So then when you take it and you spread it on some toast with butter, you're gonna get that bitterness, but the sweetness. And it's
All
just
right,
gonna
guys, I'll
hit.
be back in 5. I'm gonna go.
I know. I was gonna say, can I get a snack?
Gotta go to the store, get some marmalade.
I have to go drink broth.
But yeah, that's it. Kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, what is this project about? But the project is just about the process of creating, of connecting and bringing together things that usually wouldn't cross paths. Like even the musicians that I work with, Maurice, Lorenzo, Simon, um, Thibault. What are the odds that we'd even cross paths? Because a lot of the musicians that I work with, a lot of the people that I'm closest to, we do have the accessibility of the internet. But I didn't meet them that way. I met them in complete serendipity. Like the way that I got out there initially was just, I met a friend at college and we became really close. But completely randomly, it wasn't like I didn't know I would make a brother out of my friend Jan, who was raised in Belgium and then moved to the States. But we were just friends, and one day he's like, "Yeah, my parents are going to Las Vegas. Can I crash at your place so I have a ride to school?" And I was just like, "Sure." I've only known you for a few weeks, but sure, And moments like that build up to the point where I'm in Belgium for the first time, and I'm like, I didn't even know where Belgium was on the map, aside from some, tidbits from history class. Now I'm in this, foreign country, connecting to people who I would have never met on the basis of the thing that I love the most, which is music.
Yep.
And then, for example, I connected with my friends' cousins, like his childhood friends. They're also making music. One thing that the internet does is it shrinks the world, and cultural lines cross. So, they grew up watching basketball and football and listening to hip hop. Then we arrive at this connection serendipitously, and they're like, "Yeah, we have a friend. He makes beats, and he has like a studio set up. Let's go there." We get on the train, and I'm like, "Where the hell are we going? This has got to be a trap. It's just farmlands everywhere. There can't be a studio out here. All I see is cows and horses." And then we get there, and that's how I meet Maurice. Maurice is like 14 years old. He has like egg cartons on his wall. So this is my studio. I've been playing saxophone since I was 1 years old. Not 1 years old, but you know,
He was born with a reed in his mouth.
practically. But you know, all these things they kind of lead up, and you're not thinking about how they're going to create this bigger picture. It just happens. Like even in hindsight, you know, I'm at Maurice's house. We recorded, and mind you, his house is like a repurposed barn. Like it's a farmhouse, and his parents are also very creative, but more in a sense with furniture and spaces and designing spaces. And I'm just in this. I'm like, what is this? And it's like this crazy table, and they bring out, you know, fresh bread, you know, some butter that they got from their neighbor, and some marmalade. I'm just like, oh my God. And years later, you know, things play out, and we made a project called Marmalade, you know. Um,
Oh,
so it's like it's easy to sometimes get lost and think like, oh, well, when do I get to the next step? But sometimes you gotta fall back and know like, no, this is all part of the process. So like me burning out and feeling like nothing, I feel like that's part of the process for whatever's coming next. You know, the realizations and the experiences that are necessary that you can't calculate for that. You can't, you
yeah.
know, and the connections that I made through that, you know, because it's one thing to go through something like that and be at home and be close to your family, but to be thousands and thousands of miles away, it put me in this place of vulnerability. Um, and I was able to see people at their best in the sense that I was completely vulnerable to anything, to the elements, to mental wellness going, you know, sour, and to have people who just took me in and like, nah, bro, just chill, feel at home, you know. So I got to give thanks to people like Bruno, people like Jordi, people like Lars, who just are like, bro, just eat, relax, this will pass, you know. And that, in a sense, that gave me the fuel to just like, you know, die trying, because the fact that I could go through that, completely burn out, have a dissociation with myself, but then have people that, you know, I've known maybe for a few years or who I had just met, you know, be able to bring me into their home, into their spaces. Now that's what I want to do. I want to have a space where I could bring people in
Yeah.
and just be like, bro, relax, just eat, chill out. You'll
That's
be
what I
good.
love.
This will
Be
pass.
merry.
I love
So
that.
Exactly.
nice.
I mean, that's like that essentially in its essence is what I've been wanting to create within aeronautics. I'm like, how do we create this landing pad of support? You know, so people can just, people can connect, artists can connect. Everybody goes through the same process. Everybody has their highs, they have their lows. And
Hmm.
it's awesome when you're in your highs. People give you tons of love. They're like, all right, look at this person. They're pumping shit out. They're producing value. They're making a name for themselves. They're putting a splash in the world. But then, when you're at your lows, like who's there for you?
Yeah.
Who's gonna give you a hand? Who's gonna help you out? Who's gonna call you out? Who's gonna tell you like, hey, like you need to take a chill. Take some
Yeah.
time for yourself.
Or just
Or like, hey,
enjoy the
get off your
moment.
ass. Get a
Like I
little kick.
remember we had booked this studio, and this is another person that I'm just eternally grateful for. His name is Close, and he's part of like the fabrics of Belgian hip hop. Like he was part of one of the groups to first start, you know, doing something and expressing and being like, we also feel this, you know. And we're working with him in the studio, and for me, it was the biggest studio I had ever been in, but I was already on the verge of burning out. Like we had been partying, performing, drinking, smoking, excess and everything. And we get there and I'm like, oh, this is it. I have to be everything right now. And this guy was just the chillest, like just a breath of fresh air. We'd be there like, oh, we have too many songs. We have too many ideas. He'd just be like, huh, luxurious problems, you know?
Yeah.
And to be able to connect other people to people like him, and like you said, create this landing strip of just a community that you can move around and experience and connect while having that safety, that acknowledgement, that wisdom, that I got from people like close, like, man, I've been through that. Don't make your ego too big or it's easily bruised. You want to feel like a star, but even stars go out, and the star doesn't realize it's going out until it's too late. So I always remember things like that, and now having the moment to reflect on it, it's like you can't plan for that. You can't go out and be like, oh, I want to meet this guru, this, you can't. You live it.
And that's why I think it's so important, right? Like, you live it, you be. And I do truly believe you bring in the things you need. You bring in the experiences. You bring in the people. Sometimes when we're younger, especially, and we're learning and growing, the experiences and things we bring in are painful. And they hit you in the face. And they remind you that, hey, I think your ego might have been a little too big here.
Yeah.
Or something. But you can't plan, you can't strategize, you can't do anything to make yourself meet, a guru you can't plan it out, right? So why not just be and trust and see what comes into your life? Because like you said, you're reflecting now. And years ago you had this marmalade, right? And now years later, here you are. Like, you never would have thought of that. So why are we worrying and strategizing about these? And you should prepare. But like you said, part of the creative process, your journey, you can't just order a guru. You never know you don't know what your marmalade's going to be. So just be.
Just be. Yeah. You can have a way of being. You can kind of stylize that, have a routine, but know that there's always going to be things that obstruct that. There's always going to be, but the things that obstruct that is exactly what you're getting into that flow for, is to attract that and to be in that.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, and because you never really know too how long something might even last, right? It's all about just going with the flow. One of my, like, I love this story. Other people I tell it to tell me they love this story. So when I lived in LA, I had just moved there. I still had my big old Sprinter van, 180-inch wheelbase. This thing was massive. And I would drive around in my van, and I don't know. This is probably 4 or 5 years after I graduated high school. And maybe end of my junior year, start of my senior year was like the last time I had played music like in a band with people. My band broke up, like our singer moved to like Vermont, like our bassist went somewhere for college, all that kind of stuff. People moved on with their lives. And so that was the last time I played music. But I always kept my drumsticks and I kept my trumpet, and driving around LA traffic is awful. I don't need to explain that to anybody. And what I would do was I'd keep my drumsticks like on my dashboard, and whenever I was at a red light or stuck in traffic, I would just crank the music and I would just like pretend to play drums on like my steering wheel. Because I didn't have a drum set. I lived in my van, right? Like I wasn't carrying around a drum set at that time. And So this one day I get to this red light and I take out my drumsticks. I start playing on the steering wheel. I like blast some music. It's like hot as fuck outside, so my windows are down. And
This is
this
the
dude
most
pulls up.
Alex story I've ever heard, by the way. I had to say, like,
Like the
This
van
is how my
is the
life
drum
goes.
set.
Yeah, exactly. And this dude pulls up next to me in a truck and he like turns and looks at me and he just like starts bobbing his head and he like throws up like the rock out sign. And I'm like, okay. And I just like turn, smile, and like keep drumming. And then he like I hear him start calling out to me. So I'm like, okay, what? So I like turn the music down and he's like, hey, like you're a drummer? And I was like kinda. And he was like, oh, like I need a drummer. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I got a studio. I need a drummer. Like, can I have your phone number? So I was like, okay. So I gave him my phone number, and he hit me up like 2 weeks later. He was like, hey, um, he's like, I'm the guy that like saw you at the stoplight like a couple weeks ago. Like, can you come by the studio and like, can we play together? And I was like, okay. I was so nervous. I hadn't like sat down and played music with anybody in like 5 years. I hadn't sat behind a drum set in like 4.5 years. I had no idea what I was getting into. But I showed up. We rented the studio out for like 2 hours. Some guitarist I didn't know showed up, and we just jammed out for like 2 hours. We had the time of our lives. And yeah, I just like went on Gleb. That's his name. I was trying to remember his name. But yeah, Gleb just like he started inviting me over to his house. He had his own like mini studio there, and we would sit there and like record. And yeah, and that didn't last long. He was from Russia. His parents like lived there, and he like I think his parents or like his mom got sick or something like that, and he just like left one day and was like, hey, like I'm moving back to Russia. And I was like, we had been recording like this project and like we were like a couple weeks into it, and we probably had like 9 tracks we were working on. Like 6 of them were like pretty much like almost good to go, and then he was just gone and I never heard from him again. But having that experience and like getting back into playing music was what sparked like all this other shift for me, where I was like, oh yeah, I do have a life outside of the body work. Like I don't have to be out there playing live shows, but just like getting together with people and playing music. um that's a part of myself that I let go because I thought that I had to be successful in my job and make all this money and you know find a girl to ask to marry me and have a kid and get a house and make sure I'm financially free by the time I'm 45 or 50 so that I never have to work again. Like all these things that people tell you have to get done by a certain time. And I think everybody's guilty of falling into that. But that moment with Gleb, it's literally as simple as me being like, oh, I'm gonna play drums on my like steering wheel at the stop sign, and then him like being like, yo, can I get your number for this project? Like that literally just kickstarted me back into music. And I'll never forget that moment, as random as it was, but it was a huge shift for me. And I don't think if I like hadn't been open to the universe at that moment, like it wouldn't have come to me, right? Like I could have been like, yo, who the fuck is this random dude at the
leave me
stoplight asking me
alone.
for my phone number?
Yeah, this
um
weird LA cat. Come on now.
I met my boyfriend on an airplane, guys. Like, I
Shout
don't
out
talk like
Zach.
strangers. We lived in different states. Like, what possessed me in my head to say, yeah, like, we should talk. Let's hang out. Like, whatever it is. But it's being open. Like, it was like one of those moments where I just felt like, okay, like, you know what? I'm just going to go with this because this is strange,
Yeah.
And you bring so much in.
Safety is definitely always important. I'm not telling any viewers out there to
Okay.
just drop everything and just
No, you have to drop it all so that you can fall with the things you drop, and then let serendipity have her way.
as long as you
Yeah,
have
I feel like when
like a
you
backup plan.
yes.
or just a support system like we were talking about.
Just die trying. That's my motto. Just embrace the chaos.
You know, it's going at your pace though. Like, right? Some of us thrive on chaos. Some of us, we talked about this with Tegan, right? Like the baby and the water and some people are wired to handle certain situation trauma better than others. And that was hard for me, right? Because like I always wanted to be strong and I mean like mentally too. But when you're discovering or you're figuring your stuff out or whatever it is, and you're thinking I need to die trying without realizing like your trying is different than your try. My trying is different than your trying out. Like it's, you know, I think if we actually do what we want to do, we don't need to warn people to not do something dumb, right? But figuring out what we actually want to do is very difficult. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. I understand I can't control other people. I can't control the bad things other people do, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I feel like, you know, I very much believe being in flow, being, you know, what you can attract to yourself. In a lot of ways, when we are able to move forward that way, I do think we bring in scenarios where they can be for growth, they can be to inspire us, whatever it is, but there isn't a warning, right? That held me back for so long of like, this could be dangerous, you know, don't get in a car with this person because you have a 1 in whatever chance of getting in a car accident. It's finding that balance of like being safe, but taking a risk.
Yeah. But finding that balance, that equation is, like you said, it can be quite difficult.
And it's going to be different for everybody, right? I mean, one person's safety net is going to be somebody else's nightmare. You know, and I think that's one of the things that makes life so difficult, so to speak, is that everybody is different. You know, everybody's doing different things, is going to have different experiences within that. So, you know, I think that's why it's important to make connections with real people, because then with those real connections, you just, you know, you got real people that you can go to.
And then you can go to you. Like one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to is hosting Yordi. Like Yordi has never been to America, and knowing that I have a space for him to, you know, feel at home and be able to give him good food, and if anything happens to him, to be like, nah, bro, you good, you safe. This is your space also. That's what I look forward to the most now, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, connection, love, all of that, that's what makes our soul happy. Even, you know, looking for value when you're trying to perform, at the end of the day, it's like, because you want to be loved. If you feel valued, you feel loved, you know?
Yeah. And it's just great, like, getting in that flow. And, you know, there are very few things in life that for me compare to the feeling of performing live. It's just, dude, there's something about it. It's unreal. I mean, you get hints of it being in the crowd, right? Because you start to feel like the energy of everybody around you, and you know, as the performer, that's what you're kind of, that's kind of what you're manipulating. Like, it hit me once when I was watching a live recording of Enter Shikari play a show in, I don't know, Europe somewhere, and they're playing in front of like tens of thousands of people. And they like walk out on stage and they're like, "Hi, we're Enter Shikari. We control pitch, rhythm, and sound to control your emotions, and we're gonna do that for the next like 90 minutes." And I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're going out and you know, they're leading almost like an energetic experience through them, just like channeling their being, you know, their creative flow."
Sometimes it's not even theirs. It's just something bigger.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The number of times I've like, I've been doing something and people are like, oh, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you thinking about as you're doing that? That's incredible. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't ask me that because there's nothing going on up here. This is just, I don't know what's happening. I don't know who's running this shit, but it's moving. It's doing things. It's creating.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that was one of the greatest. Like you said, there's nothing quite like being on stage and and performing with, like, my main strength is improvisation. It's like freestyling. Like, yeah, I can write songs and I can practice them, but the feeling of being on stage and knowing the band can switch it up, like, that's why I love playing with Glass Helder. That's Maurice, Lorenzo, Simon, Thibault, and Victor. And like, we'll have our set list, but sometimes we do shows where it's like, yeah, you guys are gonna do 3 30-minute sets. I'm like, what? Three
yeah,
30-minute sets? Or it's like 3 45-minute sets in this tiny jazz club, and they're like, all right, we have 30 minutes worth of stuff. We'll just
yeah,
fill it in.
yeah.
But then it's like, you create this experience where you can't, like we said before, you can't plan for it. And people are like, oh my gosh, like, this place never gets this hype. People are dancing, like, people start flipping tables and standing on chairs and going crazy. And it's like, oh, police might come. And it's like, what are we doing? And we're just like, we're just
You're
we're
just
just
having you.
being,
Yeah,
Um and it's like you said, it's being like the conductor of those experiences. It's just a great feeling.
yeah.
Now I want to be on stage. Now I want to be with Glass Helder. I want to bring them to America.
That's who was in the promo video that we sent out, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, and that was shot and edited by Jordi. So like, all these things is like, it's the bunch, it's the crew, it's the family, and those are like, I don't know if you guys have ever read about, like, the jazz golden age and all these, like, Miles Davis and
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Coltrane, and the life that they live, and these, like, crazy. It's like, when I'm with them, that's how I feel. Like, we're just, who knows where the night will go or where the days will blend. It's so much character, so much personality, and like, now I'm in the moment again of mundaneness where I try to, like, I gotta, moderation. But when I'm with them, it's like, oh, moderation, no, excess. Let's just, everything in excess. Let's just go all
get it
out.
all done.
Yeah, and it's just, yeah, it can burn, but it's just something magnificent within that. That's why
It's
I want
worth
to
it when
take
you
them.
got the right people there.
I want to bring them out here and just go crazy, just terrorize America with jazz and electronic music, because it's like, they're these classically trained jazz musicians, but they love electronic shit. They love hip hop. They love raving. They love just having a good time and going
That's
off and saying fuck
sounds
the
like our
rules, fuck
crew.
moderation. Yeah, like,
So you are
I'd love
saying
to see
you're
them.
going to get them out here and we're all going to go to a festival together.
Oh,
Is what
we
you're.
have to be the festival. It has to
Yeah.
be like,
That's what I was literally just about to say. Like, we are gonna be the festival. We are the event.
because, yeah, like, seeing them in, that's their home environment. That's where they've been their whole lives, and they're just like, oh yeah, Belgium is nice, but we want to get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, man, I love Belgium. I don't know what y'all talking about, but again, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
But to be able to have them here, that would be, I feel like that's the next step, but you can't plan for it.
It's almost
But I
like a
feel like it's about to
beautiful.
happen.
It's like a beautiful escape, though, right? Like, you got them out there, so they can be there, and when they're in their kind of mundane like grind, then it kind of lines up, and you're like, oh, like, I'm ready to hit the ground running creatively. You go out there, and you kind of bring that cat, um, and you bring that energy with you, and that can even kind of like lighten them up a little bit and like get them into the flow, and then when they come out here, it does the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important bringing like quality people that you enjoy being with on you, or like with you for your projects. Um, you know, like when an aeronautics was just me, it was work. You know, I could make myself sit down and like pump out all this work, and like it worked for a while, but it just took out my drive. I burnt myself out. And like being able to bring on a team of people like Maddie and Mike and Tracy and Mariah, um, you know, it brings back that fun because we can all kind of like bounce off of each other's energies. Um, like literally this morning, like I was going through like all sorts of like this logistical like chaos, and I knew Maddie was at work. She had told me she was going into the office today, but I was like, I gotta just blast Maddie with some messages right now. So I just hit her with like, fuck Zuckerberg, fuck Facebook. Like, I know we're live streaming to Facebook right now, but like
Sorry.
I
No,
was just getting like
the
all
signal
this
just
shit.
got cut right now. He's like, oh, weird. Fuck the Zuck. Fuck you.
But yeah, it's like, but just like having that ability to like dump into Maddie, and then like the literally like maybe like 4 messages back and forth exchange that we had just burnt through all that shit for me, and I was able to just like get back into like my flow of working again, because I had somebody that I could just blast it out with. I knew like they would just talk to me and like make light of it, and you know, I was able to work through it. Cat, come on.
The team part is very important. Like it's a team of people, like you said, like you connect to and you feel good with. And like you said, Alex and I love our whole team being able to do that. And this is really one of those experiences where I've had people I love to work with and I love them, but it's a group where we very much kind of, I would say, flow on the same wavelength. And so being able to have that and communicate makes things, 10 times easier. If I have an
Ow.
idea, I'm like, Alex, here's a voice message. Here's what I'm thinking. Are you okay? Your
You
cat
can't
bite
just
you.
attack you.
He just bit me.
Like, no.
He's like working and like trying to get onto my lap, and I finally let him up, and then I start petting him because he kept like nudging me, and then he bit me.
Oh,
Sounds
that's
like
Our
a
cat
cats
little,
for you.
Rocky will. I know. I don't.
Like,
They
love
keep
me,
you on your
love me.
toes.
Give me love. Give me love. Fuck you. Ah.
Anyway, sorry to distract everybody, but Damien was being a
mean,
little feisty.
We got Link in the beginning. We got Damien at the end. It's fine.
All right, so we're about an hour, 15 minutes in. I kind of lost track of whatever we were talking about, but do you want to maybe kind of start moving towards closing up by telling us about some of the things that you're maybe working on, that people can kind of look forward to maybe following your journey as you start to produce and put stuff out there? Or like what can people kind of not expect, but you know, what are you
It's
up to?
we got marmalade in the jar. It's sitting. It's blending together. It'll be ready soon for people to spread on their toast in whatever form we were able to share that. Um, and yeah, it's like taking right now. I'm in the moment of reflection, like all these experiences packed in a few months, and then the crash and the burn, and now it's like, all right, I can walk again. Now I'm like, look at these cool scars. Like, let's do something with this. In terms of those projects, the song that's played in the promo video, that's one variation of a song that we made. Like, I want to say there's 6 or 7 remixes. So there's one produced by Maurice and our friend Creo. That one was produced by my friend Lara, and they're living in London. They're from Vienna. We have another one from a friend in Japan. So I want to put that out first and get the ball rolling. Now that I've, like I said, recovered from that crash and burn, it's kind of just like I want to show off what was created in that process. and at the same time just move towards a space of being able to also share and show those moments as they're happening, you know, because again, in the moment, sometimes you don't realize the magnitude of those events and how much of an effect they're going to have on the whole trajectory, on that whole painting that you're just, you know, throwing the strokes onto. So it would be great to be able to have that captured, and as it's coming together, then this big work of art and be able to showcase that and however, because again, you can't capture it all. You can't, you know, keep a lens in your eyeball to record everything and to capture every feeling and every moment. But even
It's very
fragments,
Black Mirror.
yeah. But even fragments of it to share that story so that people who experience same or similar parts of that journey of that odyssey can relate to it and know like, okay, you know, there are going to be those trials and tribulations. There are going to be those moments where you you lose sight of the bigger picture, but it comes together.
Yeah.
And it would be amazing to share that and to just get in flow of, because I often forget, you know, like having this conversation is great because I remembered and looking at things in hindsight and seeing how they all panned out. But to share that allows for that, you know, reassembling of moments and seeing how they flow together to create what I think is just a great story.
Oh
And
yeah.
and people, we all need stories to relate to, stories to see ourselves in, stories that remind us that, you know, the journey is the fruit, you know, not
Yeah.
the piece of cheese at the end of the string that we're chasing that will just always keep running afterwards. It's like, no, look around where you're running, look around where you're walking,
Yeah.
and there's fruit everywhere.
Not getting caught up in the rat race, as they call it, right?
Yeah,
There's fruit everywhere.
exactly.
Make marmalade. Keep
Exactly.
making
Make
marmalade.
marmalade, make jam, and save it so that when the winter comes, you have something savory and sweet, and you're like, oh man, I'm so glad.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to kind of start wrapping it up. Um, you have any last last lasting comments that you want to share with people?
Again, sharing my gratitude and appreciation for you guys putting this together, and you know, kind of conducting the conversation that led for all of this to be expressed. I look forward to having that relationship and that sense of flow with you guys in the future. It's, you know, I think it's what you guys represent, and yeah,
Yeah, I
just
appreciate
know
that.
marmalade is in the jar. There's a lot of people who are waiting for marmalade. It's in the jar. It's sitting. It has the date labeled onto it, and you know, when the fall comes, it'll be ready.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of socials are you on? Where can people find you?
So on consistently, none of them. You have to find me in real life wherever I wander. But
I love
if you
that.
want if you want to get scraps and random postings of random things that I'm doing, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I also have a Twitch. Right now they exist in two different spheres. But that's something I'm gonna bring together now. So yeah, Instagram, Twitter. If you want to reach out to me, Instagram is the best place. Though I would like to have a space that's independent of the bigger machine that is Meta. I mean, you know, it's a cool thing and all. No hard feelings towards the Zuck, but yeah,
Oh, I
Hey,
got some
man.
hard feelings towards the Zuck.
yeah. There's a lot of variables that, you know, I try not to become over dependent on those mediums because they could always just vanish, or you could get your
Yeah.
account taken away. But yeah, if you want to be in touch, if you want to keep updated, those are the places that I will post. Um,
Sweet. Yeah, and I fucking love you, dude. I have always enjoyed our friendship. I've always enjoyed talking with you. I think I've said this before privately in conversations, but one of the things that always like intrigued me about you, because I knew you in high school, but we weren't necessarily like close buddies or anything.
now we're still caterpillars,
But
just consuming.
one of the things that really not surprised me, I shouldn't say that, but one of the things that really intrigued me, like when we started talking and hanging out more, was your ability to have conversations like this. It's since leaving high school, it's been an amazing surprise to me how many people don't want to have real conversations, who don't want to
Yeah,
talk about mental health, who don't want to talk about taking care of themselves, who don't want to talk about struggles, who don't like, they don't want to hear about it unless it's like, all right, like we're going out Friday night to get drunk and, we're just
Which
going to
is
figure out where
also
we're going.
fun, but it's
yeah,
Which
that's
is
about.
fun, not trying to shit on that, but, balance for me at least.
yeah,
And you know, that's something that I've always very much enjoyed about our connection was being able to have those conversations. So from my end, like we'll be tracking your projects. I got that real life connection, so
yeah,
even
man.
though he
I'm
may not
always,
be on the socials, I'll be sure to keep everybody in the loop through our platform.
and that's one thing with our friendship is like you always check it in. "Oh, what are you working on?" And it always gives me like this boost to like keep going and share it and put it out there. And that's something that I can't express in words. My gratitude. So I'm gonna put it out there.
Every time
I'm
you show
really
me
loving the
something, I love
bromance.
it. Every time you show me something, I love it, So why would I not ask? I want to see what the new is.
Yeah.
I got that exclusive sneak peek at this video he showed me. I won't say anything else about it. I think he showed Maddie too in a group
I
meeting we
did.
had.
It's so. Ooh,
It blew me away.
I'm
That's
so
part of the
excited.
one project. So the 111.1 radio. That's what I'll probably call the collection of remixes in that video and the original. That'll probably be the first step. That'll be step one is putting that out since it's closest to completion. It's pretty much done. It's just,
Formalities and
formalities
edges.
and you hold on to these works and it's like a child you have to just set free into the world.
I have every single painting I've ever done because I've refused to sell any of them. So I know exactly what you mean. They're all either hanging up in my place or just sitting in the corner over there.
Oh, Neuronautics office.
Whoop, whoop.
We
Yeah.
got this all, Alex.
Definitely. The ones that I'm not going to keep at home. But
Yes.
cool. Well, thank you, Maddie, for joining us.
Thanks for
Always
having me,
love
guys.
having you along. Always great chatting with you.
I love talking.
Thank you, Link, for providing the emotional support in the background.
Yep.
Damien for biting my arm like 20 minutes ago.
No, he was just reminding you of the time. He's like, "Hey, come on, man."
He's like, all right, wrap it up, wrap it up. I got cuddles that need
Yeah,
to be
it's
had.
late for you guys. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Isn't it like
Yeah, it's 12:30.
All right.
It is.
Time for us to wrap up. But thanks again, everybody. Much appreciated.
Appreciate
We got
you
some
both.
more
I'm so
chats
excited.
in the work. We're going to be sending out some more promo videos coming up. Because, yeah, I think in 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks, we got another chat coming up. So be on the lookout. And like I said,
Join our sweep widget giveaway on Discord.
Join our sweep widget giveaway. Yep. We got another giveaway going on within Discord. I like giving out free stuff. I can't help it. So if you stick around the aeronautics community, you're bound to win something at some point. So that's just how it rolls.
I got to make sure to answer I gave away all my aeronautics hoodies because everybody's like, "Where'd you get that?" I'm just like, "Yeah."
The one in the Aeronautics Discord server right now is, I think you just have to hit 30 messages sent within 24 hours within the server, and we're giving away one of our unreleased embroidered hoodies.
They're
Ooh.
so sick. They're so
So
sick.
you will be the first, whoever wins will be the first person to own one outside of me owning some testers. So
I'm about to
definitely want to
win.
get in on that.
Whoever's out there,
Exclusive.
just know I'm gonna win.
Calling the shots.
This is scripture.
He's manifesting right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, and we'll all chat soon.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night.